Hi, I'm Tessa, a veteran educator working in the field of special education.
And I'm Kim, mom of 2 autistic boys and a late diagnosed autistic person myself.
And welcome to Totally Over the Spectrum, where we dive into embracing autism through understanding and support. Welcome to episode 38, where we discuss a diagnosis as an adult. So I thought with this one, I'm going to jump in and ask you questions as you go along your list. I hope you don't mind.
No, I think that's going to be good. I wanted to start by saying that it's becoming increasingly more common for people to seek out an autism diagnosis later in life. And you hear a lot of people out there saying they were late diagnosed in their early 20s, which, to be fair, is late diagnosed.
Yeah, because normally we do find that diagnosis occur between the ages of 2 and 4, which is considered an early diagnosis. So interventions can be put into place in order to, have a higher success rate as they mature.
Yeah, typically in Canada, kids are diagnosed by about age 3. And then you get those sort of with advanced language and cognitive skills that might be diagnosed a little bit later at around the age of 12.
We usually start to see the contributing factors start to occur around about the age of 6, between 6 and 8, where we see where, the difference between them and their peers are becoming a lot more significant, which leads most people to go down the path of diagnosis.
So for me, I received a very late diagnosis at the age of 50. And I've had a lot of people ask me why I bothered. Like, you've made
including
it this far.
myself. Yeah, including myself.
Why do you need that now?
Yeah.
So I wanted to say that there are groups of people that are completely missed or misdiagnosed in childhood. And that happens to be women and girls and people of color. And that's mostly because of outdated or biased diagnostic criteria.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I think women are generally misdiagnosed because of their high masking abilities. And, the criteria in which autism was originally diagnosed was more, kind of male focused. And originally it was a, 1 to 4 ratio. And I think now it's being reduced to maybe a 1 to 3 or even a 1 to 2, where there's males versus females.
Yeah, I mean, this still happens today, but I think that with more awareness and more understanding, it's becoming better. Like, professionals are getting better at diagnosing women and not misdiagnosing them with something else. So why didn't I get assessment done earlier? I didn't even know anything about autism until I had kids and they were diagnosed.
Which is fascinating.
I think it probably happens for a lot of people. You have your kids, and your kids go through the process, and they get diagnosed with autism. And now I start to educate myself to support and understand my kids. And then you start learning about the high heritability. It's a huge genetic component. And then people started pointing out autistic traits that my kids had that I had. So you start noticing that. But I wondered if I was faking it. Like, am I just imitating my kids? Or am I looking to see that connection that, people like to think, oh, my kids are just like me. That sort of ideology. So I wasn't sure. And I really doubted it. I just didn't know.
Yeah, well, I think that is a good approach, because I think when there's your family dynamics and cohort, you do intend to mirror each other, right? When you are with that person day after day, your kids generally mirror your habits until they start to mature and get their own. And then sometimes you kind of mirror your kids' traits. So I can see how mirroring each other is a commonality, but at what point does it go from a commonality to actually autism? So what is that difference that separates the two? That's my curiosity aspect.
Even noticing those traits wasn't enough for me to bother to get an assessment done. Like I wasn't sure if I was autistic, wondered if I was faking it. And then I started watching videos of late diagnosed adults and learning about their experiences.
Okay, I hope you're able to share some of those with us.
It was incredibly validating. I really identified with the challenges that people were talking about, their struggles with social situations. That is an autistic thing. Not, not being able to understand subtext and all of that. Sensory issues. I didn't know that wasn't something that everybody experienced. Because when you grow up with it, you just think that that's just, everybody must do that.
You felt it was a sense of norm to you. Am I to understand that?
Yeah, I mean, you can't function when your sock is twisted and the seam is on the wrong side, or your sock is wet. And then that's the end of the world for me. Everything else has to stop, and that has to be removed, and another clean pair of socks put on.
Okay, so I'm just trying to bridge or understand the difference over here. Using that example, for me, if I had a pair of wet socks, I would just remove the socks and then I would be fine. I would not have the need to go and put on a fresh pair of socks unless the weather dictated it. But for me, just removing the source of irritation would resolve the matter. But yours, to my understanding, has to go to that next level of going, the wet sock has to be removed. So, because that is the sensory aspect that is too much, it's overstimulating. And then in order to be able to regulate again, you put on a fresh pair of socks in order to allow you to feel calm and in the zone.
The event is not over just because the new socks are put on. And I think you brought up a good point. Autistic traits are human traits. The difference is that there's a higher degree of intensity for autistic people. So while my sock is wet, I can't hear people. It's everything else. It is overwhelming to me. Whereas you would still be able to have a conversation if you had wet socks on. If you weren't able to take them off right away for whatever reason, you would still be able to function. Yes. I would cease to function, and it would have to be taken care of immediately in the moment. And even then, it's going to take a while for my body to regulate itself again. It isn't just over.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to ask you questions because it's
people
just
they're like, well, I do that. That doesn't mean I'm autistic. You're right. It doesn't mean you're autistic. If you are hearing this and you think, wow, yeah, I can't do anything else except take care of that. And even then, my feet still feel off for a little while until that goes away. That's more than typical.
Okay.
You also have to remember that high masking autistic individuals can get really good at hiding their autistic traits. Right? We talk about masking in episode 12, and I'll put a link to that. So you're not sure what you start masking as a coping mechanism, and a lot of people weren't sure who their real self was.
Well, one could safely argue or play devil's advocate in this case and say, hey, neurotypical people will say, I mask, right? When I go to work, I put on a mask in order to meet the demands of the workplace. When I'm in a social setting, I put a mask on in order to be able to cope and deal and function in that setting. And when I'm home, I start to become a little bit more of my authentic self. But even then, I have a certain level of masking in order to cope with the demands within a home. And so people generally mask. So what's the difference between a neurotypical person masking and a neurodivergent person masking?
And I think that's the same. I think it's the intensity. If you've gone to work all day and you've been professional all day, when you come home, you're not burnt out. You might be tired, a general work day, but masking for autistic people is pretty much all the time unless you're alone.
Okay, but well, that could also be personality traits too, right? An introvert versus an extrovert.
Yes. Yep, that's true too. I think that it's always the intensity. So it's like, if you're working at a professional level, then you're probably monitoring maybe your vocabulary a little bit, maybe your body language a little bit. I would have to monitor everything, the cadence of how I'm speaking, my body language. I would have to suppress my stimming, right, which is your repetitive movements in order to self-regulate. And I would have to be thinking about all of the details, because it's not, you're constantly thinking, who is this person? What are they to me? What is the appropriate social interaction for this level of intimacy in a relationship? So I have to think about my answer to the cashier at the grocery store. I have to think about, that's if she says, how are you? That's different than you saying, how are you? And I have to think about that every time, unless I have a script prepared to know, okay, in this situation, this person requires this kind of response. Nothing is just sort of off the cuff natural. I have to think about it every time. So there are all of these components all the time in every situation. Otherwise, as soon as you drop that mask, people are like, oh, what's wrong? Why is your face, you don't look happy? Are you okay? No, that's just resting face. So I'll have to make sure I've got my face on so that people aren't thinking there's something wrong. Always.
Okay.
So it's the intensity and the amount of detail and all of the cognitive processes. Neurotypical people don't go through that, apparently.
Well, I guess what you're trying to emphasize over here is the cognitive load that you carry is far greater than a neurotypical person. And I'm talking about a neurotypical person who, meets the criteria of functionality in society as society dictates it, right? To be able to pick up on social norms and cues effortlessly, and able to blend in and not be emotionally, mentally, and physically tired as a result of that interaction. Okay. Just putting it out there.
Yeah. So I've also heard other people talking about seeking out a diagnosis because they were looking for answers as to why they had long-term mental health issues like anxiety, depression, or burnout. Or they might have had a medical professional who was good at their job suggest an assessment based on that person's history. I didn't even think I had anxiety. I thought that was just the normal state of being.
Well, anxiety does exist in a lot of, as a diagnosis unto itself, but the comorbidity of a person with autism having diagnosis and depression is a lot higher. So would it be accurate to say that most people, start a diagnosis of depression, anxiety, and then kind of go down a rabbit hole to find out that it's leading more towards autism than just depression and anxiety?
Yeah, the autistic anxiety. We also talk about that in an episode, so I won't talk about it here, and I'll put a link to that. I'm just gonna write it down for myself so that I don't forget.
You're
there
welcome,
you go,
Kim. Okay.
I didn't actually do it for any of those reasons. Those weren't my reasons. They're all valid. They're all valid reasons, but basically I went and had an assessment done because I was told my entire life that I was weird.
Oh, not by me.
No.
Because I like weird.
I know. Being told I was weird was not always meant as a criticism. Sometimes it was sort of done in a joking, fun way, like, oh, you're weird. But the answer, because I needed to know why, and the answer was always the same. It was always, I don't know, you just are. Just super unhelpful.
It was, for those of you just tuning in, Kim and I have known each other for a while, and we have an amazing friendship. And we have discussed in depth the process of your diagnosis and the reasons for your diagnosis. And, there were parts of our conversation that made me really, really sad, especially when it came down to discussing the family component of how that interaction within the family made you feel. And I'd love to know how many people out there who have got a late diagnosis that have experienced the same as you have. And if they would like to share that with us, we would really love to hear from them.
Yeah, I always love to hear other people's stories. So I went to get an assessment done because being autistic would explain why I was weird. That would be an explanation.
Okay.
What I didn't expect was that it told me so much more than that.
Okay. So we'll continue with your list because I know if I sideline you over here, it's going to go to hell in a handbasket. So we will continue with your list over there.
All right. So getting an autism diagnosis explained all of the struggles that I have ever had and that I continue to have. It explained all of them.
Okay.
So it is extremely validating, right? It explained how I think, why I can't always tell how I'm feeling, why I can get irritated so quickly by certain things, why I can't hear two people talking at the same time, physically impossible, why I can't remember people's names, even people I've worked with for years, and why I only really decompress when I am alone.
And when you say when you're alone, could you please describe the environment that in which alone means to you?
No one else is home. I am home in my safe environment with no one else there.
And that would include both your boys?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And it's not that it's like having another person in that space, even if they're in a different room than I am, still feels like I have to be on alert.
Yeah, I get it. And being as a parent, you're always on alert when the kids are home. Or
Yeah.
even when they're not home, you're still on alert.
Object permanence is hard. So sometimes when they're out, I forget that they exist because I forget that everything exists. So when I know that they're in a safe environment, when they are with, they're at school and they're with trusted people, I forget. I set alarms so that I remember to pick them up and all of those kinds of things. But object permanence, when something's not in front of you, you forget that it exists.
Okay.
Right? It happens with people. And it's not that I don't care about people. It's like everything is just sort of on hold. And then, I might greet my youngest son, Peter, when he gets off the bus. And then all of those emotions like, oh, I missed you. Those will happen then, but not throughout the day.
Okay.
I know that's hard for some people to wrap their head around. The absolute best thing that getting a diagnosis did for me was give me permission to be gentle with myself. To be able to say, I'm not stupid because things that are easy for neurotypical people are hard for me or impossible for me. I'm not stupid because I can't understand subtext, which in itself is stupid. It's okay that I need accommodations. It's okay for me to ask for them. It's okay for me to say, I am not going to that social event because it's going to be too overwhelming and I don't want to have to suffer through it. Those things are okay. So if anyone else out there is wondering whether or not they should bother to go get an assessment done later in life, I think it is totally worthwhile. I would absolutely say that it is life-changing. 5 stars, highly recommend.
Okay. So from my understanding over here, it was a sense of validation for you.
It was an answer to everything. It's 42. It's the answer to the universe. It was the answer to absolutely everything.
Okay. So why do you need an answer to everything?
Because I'm autistic and I need answers. There's questions and you need answers to them. I physically need information in order to regulate my brain.
Okay. So, and not having those answers. So what if you didn't go down that avenue or you did not have the financial means, like some people may not, in order to get that diagnosis? Being left in limbo, and which you had for 50 some odd years, and you functioned, you care for two kids, you're able to go about your day-to-day function life, what appears to be on the outside relatively, and in fact, I would say above average, very well.
There is a difference between surviving and thriving.
Okay.
And because I'm pretty good at masking, no one would know the internal struggles that I was having. I didn't know the internal struggles I was having.
So to me, from just listening to you in a nutshell, it kind of brought to the surface that what you were experiencing on a day-to-day occurrence is not the norm. That is not how you should feel. You should not feel anxious. You should not feel depressed. You should not feel all the feelings that you were having in order to function.
And it validated the feelings that I do have. Right? So it's okay to have anticipatory dread, even if it's an event that I know I'm going to have a good time at. I don't want to go. I force myself to go, even though I know I'm going to have a good time. Because every social situation is an opportunity for criticism.
So one can also say that, what if your social setting was different? What if your family dynamics was different? What if you had a very supportive family and your social system was so different that you were given the tools, you were given the means in order to cope and manage and regulate far better? Would you still have some of the symptoms that you do have currently?
That is one of the difficulties that people who are late diagnosed often find themselves in. They wonder that, what if I had had early intervention? What if I had had more support? Where would I be now? And that can cause a lot of anxiety and depression, wondering what could have been. I don't have that.
Okay, and why is that? Why do you not? Because a lot of neurotypical people go, what if my family had done A, B, and C for me? Where would I be now? Living in the what if world, right? Caught between the past and the future and not living in the moment.
I don't understand that line of thinking. I can't change it, so why am I going to worry about it? Why would I wonder what if? That doesn't make logical sense to me. I know people do it. I'm not saying it's not valid for them, but I don't understand the purpose of it. I can't change it. It is what it is. I am here now. So I'm going to deal with what is now and what could potentially be. The past is done. And it's not to say I don't perseverate on some things in the past. Like I will remember every single conversation where I was criticized for something. That will still come up. But I don't imagine what if I had not done that? What if I had done something different? I might think that in order to prevent it from happening again, so use the past as a mean, like a tool to learn, which is why I got really good at masking. But I don't think to myself, oh, if only that had been different, I wouldn't be where I am now. Well, I'm here now, though, so I don't see the point of that.
So one could safely argue and say, well, if that's the approach that you're taking, then that would make your diagnosis null and void.
No,
because you're here right
because
here
that
and
answers
now.
the here and now. That answers everything. It answers everything about how I am right now. Not just how I was before, because I am still that same person. And it allows me to put in supports for myself that I didn't even know that I needed. So it helps me in the future as well.
So is it going to help you shed some of your masking tools in order to bring your more authentic self to the surface?
It has given me the knowledge that masking can be very detrimental, but I think there are also some benefits to masking. Just like you said, neurotypical people do it. There's a reason people do it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It can keep you safe. And we talk about that in our masking episode. So I won't go too much into detail here, but I think that there has to be a balance. So unmasking is difficult and scary. And I have my people that I feel safe enough around to do that with. But it had to start with me unmasking at home, alone, allowing myself to stim, figuring out what those stims might be now, because I had suppressed them for so long.
Yeah, I've known you for a long time, and and I have yet to, and I'm pretty good at picking up on those subtleties and those changes. And I'm like, sometimes I do watch you like a hawk, and I'm going, is that, no, it's not consistent. No, no, it's not, so I can't pinpoint your stims either.
No, because I don't do them, but I do them when I get home. I also have some internal stims.
Okay.
So I have echolalia, but it's internal.
So, and we've also spoken about this in some previous episodes. So people are welcome to, we're happy to put those links on, and, or, please feel free to dive into some of our previous episodes. We'd really appreciate that.
And the like button, please.
Yes.
Really helps the algorithm. Thank you. So I've heard late diagnosed autistic individuals talk about feeling depressed after getting a diagnosis, masking for so long, they didn't know who they really were. Again, wondering how their lives would have been different, worried about acceptance from friends and family, and some of them had internalized ableism and struggled with self-acceptance. I didn't have that because I had already fully accepted my kids.
Mm-hmm. To me, it seems that this is very much a double-edged sword. In one sense, it gives you, self-empowerment and acceptance, but on the other hand, it could also do the opposite.
I think it's going to be different for everyone. And I also think that mostly for people at the age of 50, you generally tend to care less about what other people think about you.
Yeah, you've got enough maturity and life experience to say you know better and not waste the time on things that don't need to be wasted time on.
Late diagnosed at 20 is a little bit different. You're in a different spot in your journey than being diagnosed at 50.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you've got your life ahead of you, you've got partners coming up, all of these quirkinesses, if they don't accept it for you for who you are, or they question it or want to get to know you better, then there is the opportunity to express that. And also, really consider, this is a genetic component on whether, children, when in, deciding a factor of should I have or should I not have kids, because this is a genetic component that can be carried over.
Yeah. I went around my family and went, ooh, possibilities here of where this came from. Sure I did. I think most people probably do that.
And I think most people do that with any diagnosis, right? When there's a genetic component, you go, where did I get it from, right? And you start going, got it, right?
Yeah. I felt like I know who I am, and I never felt like masking made me someone that I'm not exactly. For me, I felt like masking was more limiting how much of myself I actually shared with another person. And then most of my mirroring, parroting that I do is subconscious. I can't control that. So,
but as you say, it's also part of who we are, as it's a human trait. We do that, right? Depending upon the situation that we're in, we do that in order to, cope in the situation.
The part that I really needed to work on was being gentle with myself. Because you grow up and you're told that you're wrong your entire life, and to be able to say, no, I'm not wrong. And I learning to advocate for your needs. That was hard. That was a lot of work. That's still a lot of work. And I have to be mindful of being able to say no to people. No, I can't do that. That is too much for me.
Well, I think, the analogy of the onion goes over here, right? All of these years, you've been putting all of these layers on, right? In order to cope, to function, to be the best version of yourself that you can under the circumstances. And with the diagnosis now, it's giving you the tools to certainly peel back the layers that you choose and deem necessary to peel back.
Yeah, like having someone say to me, "Oh, a bunch of us are getting together for lunch," and it wasn't a lot of people that I knew, and it's like, they'd love for you to go and come with us and all of that, and I'm like, no, because I'm already overloaded from other things that have been happening this week. That's going to be too much for me. Oh, you can do it. I can do it. Yes, I can push myself and go and mask and do it. And then I'm going to suffer for it when I get home. And I don't want to. So I'm not going to do it. And it's okay to do that. It's okay to say, yeah, I can. I can push myself past any reasonable limits, but I shouldn't have to, and I don't want to.
Okay. So it's giving you the power of
Yeah,
that
advocacy
empowerment.
piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having a professional say to me, yes, you meet the criteria for autism, and no, it was not even remotely ambiguous. It was a definite yes. That was so relieving for me because of needing that information, having the question of why am I weird being unanswered for so long, it was heavy. It's like you always carry it with you. And then that heaviness was sort of gone. It's like getting 100% completion. And for completionists out there, they'll understand that what that feeling feels like. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I have a little bit of trouble describing feelings because I'm autistic. See how that works?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah, pretty much now I have the answer to everything. And I really like having the answer. I like the correctness. Like, it's not about being right. It's just about being accurate.
Well, if to me, if a diagnosis provides you that level of freedom, it is worth every single penny, aspect, and procedure of it. Period.
And for people out there who cannot get a diagnosis, they for whatever reason, self-diagnosing is valid for people. It wasn't enough for me. I needed a professional to say, yes, I needed it.
I am one of those people, right? Because I would say, have I missed something? I'm like you, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, and I want to make sure that I have met all the criterias in order to make sure that this is the avenue in which I have taken is correct.
But some people out there can say, I haven't gotten a diagnosis, but I know. Hey, if you know, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
End of my list. Thank you.
All right. Going back to your very first reason that you described to us as why you chose to get a diagnosis. What was it?
Ask me that question again in a different way.
Why did you choose to get a diagnosis at the age of 50?
Because I was weird and I wanted to know why. And autism would be an answer to the why.
Okay. And what else?
But didn't we just talk about it?
I know. I'm just kind of segueing in over here for you.
Okay. I don't understand the question.
Okay. The way you presented it earlier on, it's, a lot of people want to get that diagnosis, want that sense of, where do I belong? And it kind of, my little ADHD brain goes ping, 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 and makes connections as it only does. And I find that in this day and age, a lot of people, have bought up circumstances in which they have gone down the rabbit hole for diagnosis and validation, right? And to me, I think is a good avenue to explore is, are people getting diagnosis for autism? Is it becoming a trendy thing?
Yeah, that is a whole can of worms out there right now that people think that it is, you're not really autistic. It's just a trendy thing. Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing because, the meats and potatoes of, of what is trend versus reality, I think that's a good, conversation to explore.
All right, for the next one.
Okay. Till then, have a great day. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and we really appreciate it.
We'll see you then. Thanks for tuning in. If you know someone who might find this episode helpful, feel free to share. Also, check out our website and socials linked in the description.